New year, new goals. Today, we are going to be talking about targets. Why I only use the word targets, never goals, why they're important, and how they can help you show up best for the communities you serve. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. My name is Peta Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.
Good morning and welcome to Coffee Time. My name is Peta Blakely and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting. I'm joined today by my colleague and co-host, Cynthia Rojas. Good morning, Cynthia.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I want to welcome everybody who is watching us or listening to us in the United States and around the world. Today, we are talking about targets. I love targets. This is my favorite topic.
I know. You love topics. You love talking about targets.
Yeah.
Sorry, like I love talking about leadership.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the beginning of a new year. You might be thinking about setting some targets for your organization, your program, yourself. So today we're going to talk about what a target is and why I think they're so important. And why they're different from a New Year's resolution or a goal.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear.
Yeah. So Cynthia, have you set any new targets for your business this year?
Yes. Oh my God. That's funny you should ask. I did some financial projections, which to me is always fun because I feel going into my fourth year as a consultant, I have a handle of what a good projection is and forecasting. So yeah, I've done some of that. That also gets joined with the types of projects that I want to do because that is what informs the financial projection. And I think for now, that is it. That is it. Those are the two main ones that I did. How about you?
Yes. Yes, I have some revenue targets. I also have some action targets, and we can talk about the difference between those two. And I have some quality of life targets. Because I learned that if I set a revenue target without a lifestyle target, I just end up sad and miserable and overworked. So
yeah, and you're so inspiring about that. And we'll talk about Karen Hines is coming on the show to talk about the 12-week year. And
I love the 12-week year.
Yeah, you do something every 12 weeks, and I've begun to incorporate that. So, but I didn't think, and you taught me the quality of life measures, targets. Yeah. And I love that. I forgot about them. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, measures and targets, because that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing. And let's first talk about why I try so hard never to say goals, right? Because goals can mean a lot of things, right? They can mean how it's going to look when I'm done, right? Or they can mean, what am I going to do to get there? Right? So like, let's say that my goal is running a marathon, right? That's one way to say it. Like by the end of the year, I will have run a marathon. But I have this other action step in between, which is probably to go jogging every day, right? And so some people could also articulate that as a goal. My goal is to run 20 miles a week or something like that, right? Yeah. Those are two like confusing types of goals. And then the third thing that I see a lot of organizations put in their planning, in their logic models, all kinds of places where they don't belong is milestones. Like this week, I'm going to run my 100th mile. Like that's a great thing, right? That is definitely a time to stop and celebrate.
I love that.
But it is neither an outcome nor an action.
Yeah.
Right? It's just a time for a party. So I'm not saying eliminate milestones. I'm not saying don't have them, celebrate them. Have them and celebrate them. They're a big deal. But they can be confusing when they make their way into like your strategic planning or your logic modeling or something like that. right?
Can I just pause? Can we pause? I love the way you said they're just a reason for a party. I love that. I'll tell you this, I don't throw parties, but I do celebrate by going shopping. And yes, a milestone leads me to the store. It does.
And if your organization hits an important milestone, right? Like you graduate your 1000th participant, right? Or you hit your fundraising target, you absolutely need to stop what you're doing and have a party.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the most important part of setting targets in your organization, right? Is like, otherwise, how are you going to know when to celebrate, right? Yeah. I mean, how are you going to know you're making progress and you're doing what you need to do? So I don't want to minimize the importance of having parties. Super important. You should celebrate them. You should post them. You should talk about them, but you should leave them off your dashboards. So that's why I don't say goal. Let me say what a target is. A target is a measure plus a target, right? Of where we're supposed to be at, right? So I can have action targets, which is I'm going to make 100 phone calls every day. And I can have outcome targets. I'm going to raise $10,000, right? Or when I do one, maybe it's a leading indicator, it leads to the other. I'm going to run 20 miles every week so that I can run one marathon at the end of the year. Right?
So, Peter, I don't know if it was my internet or if other viewers may have had this issue. I didn't hear the first part of the equation. You said targets are...
Oh, it's a performance measure. Right? Plus that value that we're supposed to get at, right? That we're supposed to be to, right? And the performance measure has to be articulated really, really clearly so that the target can be a single number. That makes sense? Like the performance measure is number of miles to run per week so that the target can be really simple, 20. And if it takes more than that to articulate your target, it's not a target. You're not done yet. There's something wrong with your performance measure.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God, that was so enlightening. Okay, so
this is why revenue targets are so easy, right? Because some of the parameters were set for us because everybody does it, right? So you are looking at a 12-month period from January 1st through December 31st. And you just do that because that's what everybody does, right? You didn't have to write that into your measure, right? And you're measuring in US dollars and you're just doing that because that's what everybody does, right? And there are two ways to measure this. You can measure it either by the value of the invoices you send out or the value of the checks you come in, right? And you made that decision once and that's just the decision you make forever, right? And so setting your revenue target is just simply picking that number. But when we think about some of the other targets, like what percentage of our third graders are going to read at grade level at the end of this year, we have to articulate some of those decisions, right? As measured by what, right? As demonstrated by reading to their teacher, as demonstrated by some fill in the bubble big state standardized test, right? So we all have to agree on like this measure is good enough, right? Is going to tell us this thing, right? It's going to tell us kids read at grade level, right? And which kids? All of the kids? Only the kids that are there on test day, right? So, so that's what makes it a little bit harder in some of our programs to define our performance measures and then define our targets.
So I just realized something. I have been trying to change a behavior and I have a goal. So it's meditation and I have a goal and the goal is...
We're all working on that one.
Take more, right? Yeah. I don't have a target. And some days I meditate and some days I don't. And so I and then I get upset because I feel like I'm losing my rhythm, but I'm not losing my rhythm. I don't have a rhythm because I've never had a target.
Right.
I've never said I'm going to meditate 30 days out of the month, which would be every day.
Yes.
And please do not
And how do we
email.
define meditate? Like if you meditate for 1 minute, does that meet the standard? Or do you need to be meditating for 30 minutes for it to count?
Yeah. Yeah. And I even got an app that tracks, and they call it something when you meditate uninterrupted daily, like when you do daily. I forget the word, but I've never thought of it as needing a number or having a number that I should be aiming toward.
Yeah.
And so I'm not as disciplined as I want to be.
And
that's what's
right. I mean, apps, sticker charts, habit trackers are fantastic for this.
Yeah.
But for the habit tracker to work, you need a behavior that is so clearly defined that you can check off when you've done it.
I love this. So a measurement which gets used a lot is what gets you to a target, but it is not your target.
Good. Yep.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this. I love this. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why is this important?
Because you play harder when somebody's keeping score. Right? Because so one reason, and like Lindsay Satterfield would talk about this. Lindsay Satterfield is a productivity guru that Cynthia and I both adore. She would say, because you get a little rush of happy chemicals in your brain when you accomplish something, right?
Yes.
And so that creates this positive feedback loop, right? Like I want to check, make the check mark and get the little dopamine rush. And then you create this positive loop of doing the behavior every day. Absolutely 100% believe in that, right?
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I think for these leading indicators, we want to set targets that are really achievable, right? Because it shouldn't really be the behavior itself that's hard. What we're doing is overcoming the inertia of not doing it, right? I mean, your entire day is sort of set out, right? And you're going and you're doing things and you're not meditating, right? It takes a certain amount of energy to stop what you're doing and go meditate, right?
Yeah.
If you are running a program and you've got participants in the building and they're doing stuff and you need to do one new initiative because of your plan for this year, right? You need to identify 10 kids and spend some extra time on them with their reading or something. There's a lot of inertia there to overcome, right? And so the action itself can't be too hard, right? Because what we're working on is just like getting ourselves into the action, right? That's why people say, if you're going to start a workout routine, on day one, you should just get out of bed and put on your sneakers.
Yeah.
That's day one. Get out of bed, put on your sneakers. The next day, get out of bed, put on your sneakers, and open the front door. And it might be like day 5 that you actually run, right? But to go from like staying in your warm, cozy bed to being outside running all in one day, that's just too much.
You're miserable.
Yeah, right. You're going to be miserable. And then you're going to feel like a failure and you're going to start to think like, oh, I'm just not the kind of person who does that. We're not the kind of program that does that, right? There's too much inertia. It's too hard. And we don't want to get into that kind of thinking, right? We want to be building that muscle, right? So, so that's why, the leading indicator itself. And when I say leading indicator and lagging indicator, I'm quoting the 4 Disciplines of Execution, which is a book I love for implementing any kind of change in an organization. So that's why we start with just these really, really attainable, right?
Yeah.
And then build and build and build on those habits, right?
I think this is life-changing, Peter. And I hope that much like me, if our viewers have not thought about this or thought about their goals in terms of actual targets, that they really make the shift because this is really resonating with me personally.
Mhm.
But I'm thinking about all the things I do that don't have specific targets. They have measurements, right?
Yes.
I can articulate the measurements. I know the difference between a goal and an outcome and a benchmark. Like I know all the
Yeah.
lingo, right? But I don't focus on those numerical targets
Yeah. They're
as
so
much as
powerful.
I focus on other things,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I really think that you you achieve it. Like, I mean, even if you're not just having it there, I had this experience this year where I have a sales target for the year for my business. Total value of new contracts brought in the year. And it just sits on this dashboard that I see every day. All year, I didn't really do anything in terms of sales. In the last month, I went to zero, from zero, close to zero to hitting my target.
Wow.
And I am convinced it's just because the target has been sitting there all year that I have exactly hit the sales target and done 95% of it in the month of December. It's just powerful, right? Just having a
It is.
number and having it there makes it happen. It also creates a context to have a conversation about it, right? So,
Mm.
one of the things that I really believe is these targets are not there to make people feel bad, right? Or to highlight when people have not done their job. That's the fear, right? People say, oh, I don't want to make a
Yeah.
target that I'm going to get in trouble that I didn't attain the target. But that's not the idea. The idea is to be able to say, like, what are the obstacles to us hitting this target, right?
Mm.
So if you're not meditating every day, it shouldn't be like, well, I'm just a bad and terrible meditator, right? Right. I can't do that. It should be, well, how can I tack this onto another behavior that I'm doing, right? Or how can I find a moment in the day that is a little bit easier for me? Or how can I adjust the expectation and just take
Yeah.
3 deep breaths, right? So that you
Yeah.
can build that. In an organization, it might be, hey, we had a target to make 100 fundraising calls, but I'm being distracted. I have too many other tasks on my desk, or my work
Yeah.
environment is kind of noisy, right? I need my
Happen.
desk to be moved further away from the childcare area, right? In order to make these calls. So we can have just a very supportive and helpful conversation when we
Mm.
have a target, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
There
what
are
about
some industries that do this very well because you were just talking about sales, right?
right?
Salespeople have very clear targets. Very
Yep.
good. There's
100%.
no
Yeah.
abstract targeting
No,
in the sales industry.
no, and what they're doing is relatively unimportant to what our listeners are doing, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how dare we just wing it, right? That's
I
how I look
know.
at it, you know?
I know.
Um,
Yeah.
so, I mean, so let's talk about the outcome targets, right?
Yeah.
Things like the number of third graders that are reading at grade level. Um, there are a couple of reasons why that really matters. And I feel very strongly that when we have a target like that, it should be very high and it should be the same target for everybody, right? And that it's really important to name that target, right? So to me, that target is always 100%, right? Now, some
Oh,
people are going to say, oh, that's just not realistic, right? Not all of the children are going to read at grade level this year. To which I respond, okay, you go find the moms of the ones that aren't and explain it to them.
right. Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Right. I think we have an ethical responsibility to set very high targets. I
Yeah.
think we have to live, like given the work that we do, we live with the discomfort of not always hitting them. But the
Mhm.
conversation is, how do we leverage and build on the strengths and assets of this particular group so that they can reach this very high target? And how can we remove barriers that are keeping this group from reaching this very high target?
Yeah. I love that, because even if the number was high, let's say 95%, and you have 100 kids, you're giving yourself some wiggle room.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. To maybe not work as hard on 5 kids. I don't want to say that wrong, but
right.
I think the wiggle,
the wiggle room to me feels morally wrong.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. And so this idea of having wiggle room when we're dealing with human lives.
Right.
Is
that's
not good.
Yeah.
It's not good. Yeah. So, and I've always felt like one of the things that has been missing in the nonprofit sector is evaluating different business models to see how we can factor that in when we're dealing with human lives. And I've had that perspective ever since I went into the nonprofit sector, because I came from the private sector. We measure everything. We, when money is the bottom line, it is amazing how things are structured, processes, right? SOPs is just a standard word. Like everybody knows that SOP stands for standards of operation. And in the nonprofit sector, it looks a little differently. And it doesn't have to always look differently. Can we adapt some things? Like targets.
Yeah, right. So one of the things that I hear, there's a fear about setting high targets because people are worried that they won't hit them, and that will lead to an uncomfortable conversation with their funders, right? And they say, they want to hand in a report card that says, yeah, we did all of the things, right? I think there's a better way to think about your relationship with your funder, right? Rather than, hey, let's throttle our own ambition and only set targets that we know we'll hit, right? Let's set really ambitious targets, right? And let's tell our funder that from our perspective, it would be ethically wrong to set low targets. We set ourselves to high standards because we do important work. And then if you find that you are not on track to meeting this target, call your funder up. I mean, call them up in the middle of the year and say, hey, here are some of the obstacles that we're seeing, and we would like your thought partnership about how to do better, right? Yeah. I mean, I think they would rather have this conversation with a ambitious learning organization than just get a report at the end of the year saying, yeah, we said we would do it, and yeah, we mostly did it, right?
And that's the thing. This is a truly learning organization. I'll tell you another thing that an organization could do. So you aim for 100%. You don't make 100%, but your report is on the learnings of why the discrepancy, and then the changes that you are planning to make or will make as a result of those learnings. That, I think, is a funder's dream.
I would hope so, right?
But that you are still morally committed committed from a moral perspective to reach that 100%.
To doing it.
You're always going to make, because you're not going to leave a child behind.
No. And here's one other thing that I have noticed happens when you don't have a universal and high target is somebody in your data set becomes the target. Right. And so I'm sure you have seen this kind of bar graph that has to do with anything that has to do with disparities. So it's, kids reading at grade level, or it's, positive outcomes from hospitalizations. And there is no line of this is what is good enough for all of the people. And white people are the highest line. And so that becomes the target, right? Now this centers whiteness in a way that is so problematic, right? And it just limits our entire conversation to how can we make the Black kids do as well as the white kids? Well, how do we know that that's how well Black kids are supposed to do? I think they're probably supposed to do better than that.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think, right, with the right supports, that they're probably supposed to do better than that. Right? And why
Yeah.
don't we just assume that right now?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God, so much to think about. Do you think throughout the year we can revisit this conversation?
Okay, absolutely.
And see where we're at? Do you know specific nonprofits that have very clear targets that maybe
Yes.
we could move on?
Yeah.
Nice, nice. It'll be really interesting to see it operationalized.
Yeah.
Because I'm blown away by just the simple concept of a target versus a measurement.
Yeah.
Get that number, get something to aim for.
Yeah. Well, good luck setting your targets, everybody.
Yeah. Yay! And Happy New Year.